Right. Okay, everyone. Let's crack on. I'm conscious that a few of us need to be away by 4 if we possibly can. So I think we should crack on with agenda item 1. Alan, could you just run through apologies and welcome for the new members, please?
Okay, I have no formal apologies. We're obviously short or one too short, but I've not heard from them. I'd like to welcome Katie Jarvis, who's joined us from the National Farmers Union as a representative of landowners. So this is her first time. She joined the forum a few weeks ago. I've long felt there was a little bit of an imbalance between the landowning interests and the user interests on this group, and I'm just, as you can see, trying to restore that somewhat. Katie works or is based in NFU in Gloucester. The office there represents the county, I think. Katie, is that right?
Yeah. So I represent about 1,100 NFU members in Gloucestershire. So it's farming members is who I'm really looking at rather than just landowners. But yeah,
Just
thank you for having me.
Great.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, great. I'd also like to welcome off a new county councillor who's sitting on the forum. That's Councillor Wendy Thomas. She's joining Robert as the she's effectively replacing Dr. Caldwell. But Wendy Thomas represents Dursley, and can only stay till about 2:30, I understand today. But
that's right, unfortunately. But it's great to be here and nice to meet you all.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for joining us. I can't promise you'll get much excitement before 2:30, but we'll try. Fantastic. Okay. Notes of the last meeting. I've run through it. I don't have any particular concerns or comments. There were a couple of things which I must admit I hadn't picked up, which should probably be on the agenda. One of those was the DMMO issue, and we did have a very late submission from Alan this lunchtime with some statistics, which I haven't had a chance to run through. And I'm going to put Alan in the hot seat and ask him to run through those at the appropriate moment. I suggest we deal with that under any other business at the end, since we don't actually have an agenda item for it. And the other thing was the rights of way and countryside access improvement plan, which Alan was going to update us on at this meeting, but again, it escaped my attention that it wasn't actually on the agenda. So again, I suggest we deal with that under any other business. Did anybody have any comments, feedback on the notes before we officially record them as accurate?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy that you sign them as accurate, Alison.
I'm signing.
Fine.
Jackie, were you saying something?
I was just saying that's fine with me.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay then, let's.
Can I interject?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, at the in any other business, I raised a point about using what I call rural pavements for cycling,
right.
And perhaps some horses, but I think that may not be practical from Jackie's comments. But that's not in the minutes, and I wanted to develop it anyway.
How would you like that addressed then, Paul?
Well, you could say I raised a point about expanding the use of rural pathways, which are chronically underused, for other non-motorised users.
Did we conclude anything? I don't think we did we?
We didn't conclude anything, no.
No.
Well, the conclusion was, I think Alan suggested I actually look at some examples, which I've done, and I was going to talk through today. Possibly that could be
Yeah. Should we
And
do?
item under any other business.
I was just about to say that. Then shall we put that under any other business? If you want to suggest some wording after this meeting to tack onto the bottom of the notes, a brief sentence or two, then I'm happy for that to happen.
Okay, fine.
Yep. And then pass that to Alan, and we'll presumably everybody else is happy if that one small amendment is made and then they're signed off after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine.
Right, okay, let's move on then. Item 3, rights of way operations update. Alan.
Right. Well, I was going to take the opportunity because we have a number of new members here, and that includes the people who started in 2019 and 2020. We've got a bit of a turnover to do a brief presentation about what rights of way are about, really. And I'll run through it quickly, and some of you probably yawn at it because it's all old hat, and some no doubt will point out inaccuracies because it's a bit broad brush. I can't think of it, but I thought it might benefit people more generally, and it's just a little presentation I prepared. We've been using a version of it for various training and things, and so if I run through that, I'm going to go sharing it, see if that works. Oh, here we are. Can you see that?
Yep.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
Isn't that good? Wow.
Great.
So just a bit of an introduction. So it's really an introduction mainly to operational rights of way, but I'm going to do a little bit on definitive map because it's important that everyone understands that that's what underpins all operational work. We've got 6 area officers covering the county. Operationally, they deal with all the protection and maintenance work. That's their areas. I'll send around a copy of this in the notes. Somehow. But then people say, well, what are these paths? And the legal record, of course, is definitive map and statement. It's a formal legal record, and it's inclusive evidence of the existence and location of public rights of way and their minimum status. It's looked after by another team, by Karen Pearman's team, the asset data team, and so I have to ask Karen for information to share with you, and she does come along to these meetings sometimes. So that's the legal record, and that's an extract from the definitive map for a chunk of the Forest of Dean down in the Wye Valley. You can see what a wonderful document it is. It's spidery lines on a black and white map base from the early 1950s, but that's conclusive evidence of public rights of way. So that's what we're dealing with. We have made efforts to put it onto a modern map base. This isn't a definitive map, though. This is just like a facsimile of it. It's what we've tried to do to make it more usable for the public. So that's part of the map which you can view online at the County Council website, and it shows the paths with their different statuses. Pink being footpaths, by the way, aren't any on there, and then red are restricted byways, which is a lot of in that area of the county. That's St Bevil's Common and Hillsfield Common. So county-wide, we've got 2,800 miles of footpath, or a bit more, 437 miles of bridle way, and 150 miles of restricted byways. Not many byways. Byways themselves are routes that are open to all traffic. Restricted byways are available to people on horseback and technically in a cart, a horse and cart if they can manage it, and obviously on foot and bicycle. Bridleways available to horse riders, pedestrians and cyclists, and then lastly footpaths available to pedestrians, or most of them are when you can get along them. So we've got a heck of a network across the county. So that shows you the proportions. So we spend most of our time dealing with footpath issues, and people actually regard us as the footpaths team, but we do deal with, we're very interested in bridleways because obviously a big part of the network, and they're also available to all those people who can use, get along footpaths. And in fact, they're also very useful for people who have to get around in a wheelchair or other mobility vehicle, because they should be available to them as well. and they won't have stiles on them. Well, they should do. Now, when it comes down to maintaining the network, this is what we're looking for. They should be properly maintained, meaning they're open and available to everyone to use. And people should be able to follow the line of the right of way. They should have signs at the roadside, waymarks maybe, and the map should be accurate, and people should be able to use the rights of way in accordance with their legal status. But we have to prioritise the thousands of complaints that we get and reports we get, and they're set out in the Rights of Way and Countryside Access Improvement Plan. So we look at these sorts of issues first: accidents, claims, obstructions, nuisance, and then maintenance issues. And we have to look at the nature and level of use, and priority is given to those used, for example, to get to school or to get to the shops. So often the ones on the urban fringe get a higher priority than the lovely rural path. So they're the priorities that are set out. Very simply put, the responsibility, general responsibility for structures across the path, stiles and gates, are with landowners. We have to contribute 25% of the cost of maintaining such structures, and often we will proactively contribute a bit more if the landowner will have a gate rather than a stile. Generally speaking, landowners are responsible for hedges and growth from the side of a path. We're responsible for natural surface vegetation. Steps, again, it's a bit of both. They're put in by a landowner, they're often their responsibility in law, but they are parts of the surface of the highway. So it's a little bit vague. We built them to clear the animals. Landowners are expected to keep paths clear of crops, and obviously rolled and things after ploughing, so that they're marked and visible and easy to use. Bridges are usually ours, 2,500 of them. There's a rather nice one on the left there, which we restored some years ago, which doesn't look anything like that anymore. It's an old photograph. Most of the bridges we have are like those kit bridges on the right. That's the Myrie Bridge, very nice little bridge in Nailsworth. A couple more bridges, so some of them are very big. We've got bridges which are 30 and 40 metres long. They're quite a challenge, and the cost of maintaining them is huge. Surfaces, well, the natural surfaces are ours in terms of trying to maintain it, but private vehicle use obviously becomes an issue, and we have to try and make it or keep it fit for public use, but by balancing the needs of the private owner of land, you know, because a lot of routes share. You know, footpaths go along driveways to farms or houses, so we have to find a balance there. And often we'll get landowners to contribute, or indeed we'll let them surface a path going to their home, because that might suit us as well, better maintained route. And then there's a load of enabling legislation which helps the council deal with interference with rights of way. So, for example, there are various rules about cows and calves and bulls in fields, which they're all to do with trying to keep people safe, but recognise the need for farmers to be able to have livestock on their land. Lots of bits and pieces around that, which I won't go into in any depth. Volunteers do a vast amount of work for us, less during COVID than ever before, which has been a bit of a blow across the Cotswolds particularly. But that's a bridge that some volunteers put in, with probably rather unnecessary VNs on it. And now turning to last year. This last year has been one of our most difficult years, really. Probably except for the time when we went through foot and mouth back in the early 2001 and 2. It's been a really difficult year. We typically get 2,500 reports from the public, and we got 50% higher last year. We're getting a lot of complaints about that not responding to reports because we just haven't got the staff to deal with everything. More freedom of information requests than ever before, more MP letters, more complaints from farmers about people walking everywhere and breaking down fences and picnicking and barbecuing where they're not wanted, or dogs in cattle. So all manner of things, all of them thorny and none of them straightforward to resolve. So that's left the team struggling, frankly, with how much we have to do, and we just have to do our best. But what I plead for is understanding from stakeholders, because it's not all going to get done. We won't get around to everything, but we'll try and deal with the more important stuff. But on the positive side, I did bid a year and a half ago successfully for an additional £500,000 to spend on the network of bridges, with work progressing from the 1st of April 2020. In fact, it's more than 500,000. I actually bid for 750, but we've only been guaranteed the first 2 years of it. So hopefully that's going to start showing. We've done a lot of work on bridges, some fairly substantial bridge issues across the county. That's the latest one that just completed.
Wow.
That's the bridge at it's on the True at Ebley. It's actually got 3 arches. That's just the first bit of it, and that's cost us about £20,000 to do. And usually that would be twice what the area right of way officer might have to spend in their patch. So this bridges capital fund has really helped us. So that's it. I invite questions if that's okay, Alison.
Do.
Anyone?
I have my hand up.
Charlie. Okay.
Right, I'm going to query the stats. You said there's 3 miles of byways, and that's 1%. So either there's 34 miles of byways, if there's 1%, or else the byways are only 0.1% of the network.
I suspect you're right. It's near 0.1%. I pinched those stats from a Mike Barton presentation, which not known for his mathematics.
Blame somebody else.
I pinched almost the whole presentation from Mike. Why do it again? Okay, I'm trying to shut this down. No, I don't know how to do this, but I will say. Sharing.
Oh, yay, you're back.
Oh, wonderful.
I have a question.
Yes, Paul.
Does the county council actually own the surface of the land of the path, as I've been told?
Well, it doesn't have freehold rights to it, but it's got an active interest in the surface of paths through the Highways Act. So it's the top couple of spits depth is what the courts have found. It's whatever we need to maintain it. So if we've got a path in an urban area, we'll probably pop some blacktop down at some point. We own that top layer, that top skin, but we don't own what's underneath. So we don't have the freehold to it, and we wouldn't be shown on the title deeds or on land registry documents that you might seek. The same applies to all highways, so public rights of way and minor highways. If you think about roads, we own what we need to maintain a road. We often don't own the land. In practice, it's not much use to anyone else once we've got a road on it. But we often don't have legal title to it. We do where we bought roads, and that's a slightly different kettle of fish. So yeah.
Well, there's that wonderful phrase, isn't there? Vested in the Highway Authority.
That's right. Yes, the service is vested in us.
Because it seems there's like 2 views of looking at it. Because landowners who own the land underneath seem to be able to dig up the path, and yet it's owned by the county council, the surface thereof.
Yeah, I think it's difficult concept ownership. So we don't really own it, and the landowners have a right in law, or some farmers have a right in law to plough up paths in certain locations. So crossfield paths, they've got a right to plough them up as part of a normal farming operation, as long as they reinstate them. So in a sense of ownership, we don't own it.
I think that's the point of reinstatement.
Yeah, well, and sometimes we have to chase people up, but some farmers are very good at reinstating their paths.
Alan?
Yeah.
If I can suggest what I understand the law to be, if it's a carriageway, in other words, a restricted byway, a byway, or a road, then the top 2 spits are definitely within the ownership of the Highway Authority. With public paths, which are footpaths and bridleway, the right to pass and repass over the land exists. So in many circumstances, the highway authority does not have any ownership of the surface. It merely has a responsibility to, in certain circumstances, look after it. So there is a fundamental difference in my understanding between a carriageway and a public path.
I'm happy with that in a sense. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Alan. That was very useful. It's a shame we couldn't see it in person, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, then let's crack on then with item 4. Richard, do you want to lead on this, or is it Alan?
Can I just say on item 3, I thought we were going to look at more specific issues.
Right.
Of issues with footpaths, practical stuff. I was particularly concerned about the footpaths on north on the side of the River Severn, north of Gloucester, because there seems to be some sort of like ongoing problems with that. But I don't want to hold up the meeting by taking over the agenda. But that was. I thought that was where it was going to be dealt with. That's all.
Can I comment on that, please?
Yeah.
I think what we want to try and do is keep the access forums strategic and not focus on individual paths or little bits of the network. I'm very, very happy to take that offline. I can talk to you at length about it, about what we're going to do about the paths just north of Gloucester. We've got plans in hand, but I don't know that they'd interest most of the meeting.
No, that's fine. Alan, that's fine with me.
I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? I tend to agree that we wouldn't want to get bogged down in a particular issue unless it was a path that had a strategic connection or strategic importance. But equally, if it is a collection of paths in an area, that seems to me that it is bordering on what I would consider strategic, and therefore potentially it is something that the forum should be looking at.
Okay.
I mean, I'm quite happy if it is discussed and taken outside this meeting, but I don't know what other people's thoughts are about strategic. I don't think we actually define it within the forum as such, but I do think that there is quite a grey area between what is and isn't strategic. Charlie.
Yeah.
I think that, and I've always taken this view that yes, we deal with strategic issues, but what we do is take examples of the sort of problem that's faced to make a strategic suggestion to the Highway Authority or whoever else it is. So if we have one or two examples that happen to be particularly illustrative, we use those to guide our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree entirely. Okay. Do you want on the agenda? The next item was about the Black Bridge, and do you want to talk about that? Because that is again, it's an example, but it's a big example with a big chunk of cost associated with it, which we could talk about.
Yeah, I'm happy to move on to agenda item 4 if everyone else is.
Yeah. That's fine by me.
Let's move on then, Alan. Thank you.
Alison, can I just say something?
Yes, please do.
I just on the agenda I have, agenda item number 3 also says "Don't lose your way" / restoring the record.
Have you, Jackie? Sorry to interrupt there. Have you got the latest agenda that was sent? I
might have an old one. I have one.
There was a revised agenda which was sent out a few days ago because there were some updates as a result of. Thank you, Richard, for his thorough review of the previous notes of the meeting. So there was a revised agenda sent out. I'm just trying to see if I can give you the date. Yes, the date was Tuesday the 22nd at 15:20. So
I think that it just said, "Do you want to download it again?" And I thought it was the same one, so I will. I'll just do that right now. So sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all, Jackie. Thank you. Okay, Alan. Sorry.
Right. Well, the simple thing about the Black Bridge, it came up in in the press, and we were asked for a statement about it. And all I can say is that the legal process was we were looking at dedicating the path across the bridge so it joins the Herefordshire path, which comes across from the Herefordshire side. And that bridge is a big railway bridge, old railway bridge over the River Wye between English Bicknor, Lidbrook and Welsh Bicknor. So up in the northwest of the county. And so we've been seeking a way of dedicating a path across there. And it's been held up firstly by a diversion to the path on the riverbank, which was being promoted by the owner of the estate, which I think is, I'm guessing, Stofield Estate.
Sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt. It's not really a point, but it is a point. I was acting for that landowner in connection with that diversion. I don't think it's conflict of interest because the diversion has gone through and that particular issue has been resolved. But I didn't want you to think that I was just sitting here quietly and not saying anything. I was acting for the landowner on that particular diversion, but I don't think it's a conflict of interest because that has all gone through now. Yeah,
thank you for declaring that. What I was going to say is that we are going to dedicate a path across, and we just haven't established. We've got set back by COVID, the COVID restrictions, because we were going to go and meet and talk through what our proposals were with the landowner, and I was going to talk through what we might be able to do to improve the steps up onto the bridge with our highway records colleagues, and that just hasn't happened because of restrictions on meeting and all sorts of other things and workload. As I've mentioned before. So it's our intention to get on with it as a council. What I can't do is promise a timescale. The path is open and available. There's a scaffolding walkway available across the bridge because it does need work doing on it. But we are committed as a council to dealing with it.
Just for everyone's benefit, Alan, I think this might have been when you weren't with the GLAF, but we did actually go and visit that. It wasn't called Blackbridge, it was called the Stofield Viaduct, if that rings bells for anyone, just to give you the background. I think we went there about 3 years ago and we did a morning site visit to it, just to help everybody put that in context.
Okay. Thank you for that, Alison. Yeah. I didn't know what you called. Richard, did you have anything to add?
Yes. At the time when we did the visit, there was a plan to get some to identify some funds to perhaps replace the bridge with something that would have a longer lifespan. Now I understand that potential grant is no longer available. We didn't succeed in whatever we were looking for. I just wondered what the county council's long-term plans were regarding the state of that bridge, because I know it's not going to stay there forever.
I can tell you that a speculative bid was put in for funding for the Wye Valley bridges. So that's for that bridge, or with that bridge in mind, and the one at Redbrook, which crosses the Wye, and indeed the Tinton Wireworks bridge. And a bid was put in for a significant sum of money, and I think we were successful. So there was quite a lot of money made, but there's currently no scheme in mind. It was a sort of a speculative bid which was successful. So I suspect there might only be enough to do one of the bridges, but it's I think we might have got £500,000. I can't remember the numbers. It's not something which would fall in my department. You see, it would fall to bridges people to deal with it, structures. I'll follow that one up, and we'll bring a report back to the next GLAF about that one, I think.
Yeah, because if we were successful in a bid, why not use the money?
Well, that's right. But you need to know what you're going to do with it. You need to use it wisely as well.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
And you also need to weigh up the different the benefits of the various bridges. So I think there is our works planned on the Wireworks Bridge, which is a very, very heavily used bridge between Tinton and the Gloucestershire side, which there's no village on the Gloucestershire side. It just goes up into the woods, but people go up to Devil's Pulpit and the Office Dyke from there. So that's a very heavily used bridge, which also carries vehicles, which had been closed to most users for a while, but which we will probably be doing some work on, as far as I'm aware. I don't know about the other. Both of them, if you look at the one at Redbrook, that one actually provides access to the boat, which is one of my favourite pubs. And it's a very important lifeline for that pub, because if the bridge was closed, the pub would close and the business would close. So it's a link to the Wye Valley Walk from the village of Redbrook. So it has. What I wouldn't do is, I think the money would be spent on this bridge with the scaffolding walkway across it, because they all have their merits. They also they'll have their champions too. We need to work through that process. Okay.
I used to use it to cross to see my friend at Whitebrook regularly when I was living at Redbrook. So I was using it from about 1958 through to 1963 regularly.
Oh, Charlie, I didn't realise you were that old.
Don't I look it? You're just trying to be nice to me, aren't you?
Does anybody have any comments, thoughts, or feedback on that, Paul?
Well, I just wondered, when we went on the visit, it seemed that the public footpath went halfway across from one county. Has it actually been joined up?
No, well, that's the point. That's what Alan's saying, is that they haven't actually been, because of COVID, they haven't been able to meet with the landowner and discuss and agree the dedication of the footpath in the Gloucestershire side of the footpath. In Hereford it's dedicated, but in Gloucestershire it isn't, which is why it stops in the middle of the bridge.
But the landowner doesn't own the bridge; it's only on the shore side.
But what's the problem, Paul, is that the county council owns the bridge.
Yes.
And the county council, for some quirky reason of legal, reason, we can't dedicate a path on our own property. I don't know why, but for some bizarre reason, we can't dedicate that path unless we use an obscure section of the Localism Act. So there's a complicated thing involving a report and presumably cabinet or committee of some sort of sign-off before we can actually crack on with that, which is what we've ground to a halt with. Because if we followed the route of the path that's claimed under modification order, you'd end up with a route which wasn't usable. And we don't want to do that. And that's because things have changed there with the diversion of things. So we want to actually dedicate the route that's being used by the public and has been used by the public in recent time. That makes sense.
Anyone else? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Richard, your time has come. Lose your way.
What?
Don't lose your way. Item 5.
Oh, it's Charlie.
Oh, it's my fault. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, I thought you were going to discuss it. You're ramblers.
It's a Ramblers project, a national Ramblers project, as you probably know.
That's why Richard was going to discuss it. Sorry.
All right. You wish me to carry on? Sorry.
By all means, whoever. I don't mind.
Okay. As I said, it's a national Ramblers project, this is, which ties into a certain extent with also the BHS's Dobbin, I understand it's called, where again it's a case of claiming rights of way before the cut-off date, which is the end of 2025, unless, of course, the cut-off date is extended. There are rumours that it may be extended by up to 2 years, as things stand at the moment, due to the legislative load that leaving the European Union has caused national government. But that's merely rumour. So we have to work on the principle that there's 4 years left to make claims. Now, I've made a guess on the number of claims that will go in reasonably creatively, because I'm obviously involved with all rights of way organisations on this. And I've guessed at around about 250, giving that figure to Karen's team, especially Andrew, as I think being very helpful, because they're going to use that for bidding for funds to deal with the deluge, shall we say. What I will say is that footpaths, more than anything else, are the ones that is most difficult to find historical evidence for. It tends to be a bit airy-fairy, as you probably know, Alison, having worked on the landowner side. And bridleways generally tend to be slightly better. It is the restricted byways that are probably the ones that are most easy to find the evidence for historically. There may be one or two byway claims, byway open to all traffic claims, but they have to be made before the cut-off date, because byways open to all traffic are not allowed legislatively to be added to the definitive map after that date. But the interesting thing is that the cut-off date doesn't apply to claims for restricted byways where they're not already another right of way. So if you wish to say upgrade a footpath or a bridleway to restricted byway, the cut-off applies. But if it's not shown on the definitive map, then the cut-off does not apply. It seems to have been a legislative lacune in the legislation. Very peculiar, very peculiar. I recently, well, last week actually, met up with Alan Kine, who's an old friend up in Newcastle, when I was on holiday in Northumbria, and he was the one who told me about the byways at all traffic limitation. As far as Gloucestershire is concerned, I realised that there were a lot of holes in the centrally provided Ramblers information, and a considerable amount of it probably applied to changes to the public rights-of-way network for footpaths especially, where there'd been an original claim to have it added to the map, and that had either been deleted under the various parts of the legislation before the definitive map was made, or else it had been diverted since. With that in mind, I had a project I think I told you about a couple of years ago to photograph all the highways maps and also obtain all the list of streets information for the unclassified roads. That has now been done. I've also extended that to photograph all the definitive maps, the paper ones, and their changes sheets, overlays, as well as the definitive statement, the written definitive statement. And on from that again, I've also done the same to what's called the draft map and statement, although there are a few holes in that. I'm still in the process of working out how the hell we organise this on the Rambler side. It is quite a huge project, and I've realised it needs to be done in sort of separate areas on a parish by parish basis. But I've yet to get to grips with farming out the information from the definitive map and the draft map and statement to the various volunteers who will be doing the looking at. I don't want to rabbit on too long, so I'll now ask if there's any questions.
I have a question, if I may, and it relates to something Richard said to me, I think at the last meeting, when at that time there had been just produced for Gloucestershire anyway, a map which indicated which routes had provisionally been identified as possibly being taken forward as a claim. I say possibly because no sort of filtering exercise had been undertaken. And for example, I know that in my parish alone, there are routes that have been marked which subsequently have gone through a legal closure. So obviously they wouldn't be part of the claim that the Ramblers are going to make. And my question really is, has any progress been made on this this map that was produced initially in terms of a thinning or stripping exercise to start taking out those routes which there is no basis for taking forward for whatever reason? And the reason I ask this is really from a landowner's perspective, because I have recently had various conversations with a lot of landowners who are getting quite agitated by the presence of this map, which is available online and is indicating routes through their various estates, properties, past their house, etc., etc., and for which there may or may not be a basis for taking forward a claim, but which is causing quite a lot of anxiety. So it's a general question, really, and I'm sure it applies elsewhere than Gloucestershire, but what is happening with that map, and when do you hope to start stripping out those routes which are not going to be taken forward?
I think you're correct there, Alison, that this is the first part of the process. The map you're referring to is the one issued by Central Office Ramblers called the Don't Lose Your Way project.
That's right.
I think that when Central Office took this project on, they didn't realise the enormity of what they were planning to do. And of course, it was open to individuals, not necessarily members of the Ramblers or people with any rights of way knowledge, to go and look at, say, the 1880s County Series Ordnance Survey maps or the Bartholomew maps, as just two, for instances, and decide that, oh, that's not shown as a right of way, maybe it ought to be claimed. So, and it was applied on a 1 kilometre grid square by 1 kilometre grid square principles. So you'll find the blue dots shown on it ending at a 1 kilometre grid square line, and almost certainly going to be ending at a parish boundary as well, where there's a change of status of rights of way or whatever. It is hugely complicated, and I see the vast majority of what's been put on that map as needing to be deleted. But even for Gloucestershire, we're talking about 260 parishes, remember, and certainly more than 200 to which this filtering exercise will have to be done, which is why I said it has to be done on a parish by parish basis by volunteers. And this is why I have, as a first instance, gone out and done all this exercise of photographing all the definitive map and statement and the draft map and statement, and also, because it's most useful, the highways maps as well. Actually, the highways maps have proved hugely useful to Karen and her team, because before I'd done that, and therefore they were able to look at them online and work from home with them, they had to go into Shire Hall to consult the maps. So it's had a huge benefit to the county as well. Alan is aware of what I've been done. He's been passed all the links. I've put them on my professional Dropbox account, and anybody who wants them can be sent the links to them. As I said, at the moment, I have to sit down and talk through how we're now going to get the various volunteers in the Ramblers to go out and work with that information and do that initial filtering, and how we're then going to record it back into the Don't Lose Your Way website from Central Office. I think Central Office are still trying to get their heads around exactly how they're going to do this. That's the impression I get, unfortunately. But it is a huge project.
The short answer is you don't actually know, Charlie.
Well, there is that, yes, but I would suggest at least 80% of what's been put on there is, to be polite, posh.
No, it's interesting, and I appreciate your reply, because, as I say, I've certainly looked at various parishes within the county, partly in response to landowner inquiries and partly for my own interest. And certainly I've been slightly concerned at the extent of some of the links, which at the moment appear to be possible links that might be being claimed. And as I say, I just wondered if there was any identified timescale for a revised Central Office map, but the answer is obviously not at the moment.
Yes, and it's still being, the whole project, as I said, turned out to be far more enormous than anybody, certainly in Central Office Ramblers, had realised.
Yeah,
it's huge for Gloucestershire.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And it goes back to my earlier comment when I started, that claiming footpaths is probably the most difficult part on historical evidence. I am in the process of doing one of my own parish, actually, and I've been fortunate to find the Finance Act information, which probably will enable me to claim it.
Does anybody have any questions or points they want to pick up around this topic? I mean, obviously it is a huge topic. It is hugely important. It is absolutely strategic to Gloucestershire and the whole country. But of course, at the moment, it's sort of a little bit in limbo, whilst as Charlie says, the vast amounts of information are now processed. Does anybody have any thoughts, feedback, comments?
Yeah, can I come in here, Alison? Yeah, just to remind people, they've probably heard this before, but just before COVID, we had a meeting to involve a number of organisations that were involved, particularly the BHS and Ramblers, and also the County Council. And we had a meeting with a view to try and drive this initiative forward, to find volunteers, training and support for people to go and have a look at these paths and start claiming them. Unfortunately, all the plans fell apart because of COVID, and we haven't really made. I think it's fair to say, isn't it, Charlie? There's been no progress made on that since that meeting we had in March of last year. I think it would be something, I thought it was a good idea and something that we could not only engage the public in, but also individuals and different organisations. I know CPRE had expressed an interest, and we could have organised, training and identifying volunteers. But at the moment, that's with the problems with COVID, that hasn't got any further. Charlie, have you heard any more about that?
I'm afraid I haven't. No. I've done my best by both the BHS and obviously Ramblers. I've had all the information that I've got passed on to them. It's a huge project. I took around about 3,500 photographs, and it amounts to around about 30 gigabytes of data, to give you some idea of what was involved. I did top and tail the highways maps in the main, the rural ones, but the rest is just the original photographs. As I said, with that information, it's gone out to the BHS and has been very gratefully received. I've also passed it on, obviously, to the TRF and also the four-wheel drive people, the Green Lanes Association. And it's, as I said, I've passed it to Alan. Obviously, Karen has it all as well, and her asset team. And anybody else who wishes to have it is free to have the links if they just ask me.
Thank you. I'm very conscious that we are going to run out of time if we're not careful, because we've still got quite a lot on this agenda. I think the sensible thing for this particular topic, Alan, is to keep it on the agenda and revisit it again at the next GLAF meeting. And perhaps, Charlie, if you would kindly prepare an update for that, that would be much appreciated. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6, which is the A417 missing link. I'm not quite sure who's going to lead on this.
That should be me.
Right, okay. There's three initials down, so.
Well, if I kick off,
please do.
Just to say that the GLAF has been represented at a group called which was looking at the statement of common ground, preparing a statement of common ground for the development of the road, and I signed that off on behalf of the GLAF back in May, I think it was. Since then, we've had more documents which were included in the minutes of the last meeting, and some technical notes which go into a lot of detail as to how decisions were come to. I think we talked about circulating those to GLAF members, but I don't think that happened. But we can pick that up, because more recently we've now been, just at the end of last month, I was notified that the development consent order has been accepted by the planning inspector. So in other words, the work that everybody's done, not just the walking and horse riding organisations, but the others as well, have produced what they call their. I can't hear a thing now. Oh, right.
So you need to mute yourself.
Hello, can people still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I'll carry on then. Okay, so the development consent order has now gone in, and so it'll be down to the inspector. What have we got here? We have got another meeting arranged for late at the end of August. So that'll be the various groups, with us representing Charlie and myself representing the GLAF. That's at the end of August. The other interesting bit that I pulled out from this was that they've told us, this is the Highways England, told us that in the next couple of weeks they're going to be sharing information about topics of interest, including improvements to the public right-of-way network. So it'll be a matter of keeping our eyes open for that. And Alan, have you had any notification about that? About additional information about improvements to the public rights-of-way?
Interestingly not, no. In typical fashion, they probably contacted the wrong people.
Okay, well that was just to let the GLAF know where we're up to. Charlie, is there anything I've missed?
I don't think so. I had a meeting with the first meeting I attended of the Barrow Wake Parking and Access Working Group, which is something that's being done under the aegis of the Gloucestershire County Council and Atkins, their contractor. The representative from the Cotswold District Council and the representatives from the AONB, the Cotswold AONB, were also present. There was a previous meeting which was really limited to not include us three organisations. It was more a presentation of how things are. I'm waiting for the minutes notes from that, hopefully to come through in the next few days, and then I will share. I think it's sensible to wait until then to share what's previously been released for the meeting yesterday. I don't want to sort of preempt with my own view and opinion on what was said at that meeting, for instance, because obviously that moved things forward a little bit. But as I said, it is a separate thing from the missing link, although it ties in with it. So it's something that's effectively being locally driven.
Okay. My thoughts personally on this are that we should ask, well, firstly, thank both Richard and Charlie very much for all the time they've put in over the last few months representing the LAF. Ask you kindly to continue to monitor, and if we need to have another, because we had an interim meeting, didn't we, to discuss this particular topic a couple of months ago, and if another interim meeting is needed once more information becomes available and things move on, then I think that is probably the way forward to deal with this, rather than any further discussion at this point in time. Does anybody differ in that approach, or shall we take that as the way forward on this?
Okay, my only thoughts is it might be sensible for me to limit the initial circulation of anything about the Barrow Working Group to me, Richard, you, Alison, and Alan, and then see what you think. Okay. Releasing the whole lot, or only edited parts of it, to the whole of the Access Forum, because a lot of it is superfluous. It's a bit like the paperwork that's coming from the missing link. I think we need to be careful to highlight the bullet points from it that are relevant to the local access forum's interests, and not give everybody the whole document to plough through themselves.
Otherwise, nobody will read it.
Exactly.
If I can make a quick suggestion, there are a couple of links to public documents that we could perhaps circulate with the minutes, so people, if people are interested, they'll give them the links to where things are up to, as far as where things are up to now, as far as the 417. Does that make sense, do you think?
Yes. Yeah, and in that publication of the links, highlight the parts that we believe the rest of the local access forum would be interested in. So, for instance, paragraph 25 on page 64 or something like that, you know, is relevant, shall we say.
Do you want to do that, Charlie, or shall I?
I know you're far better at it than me, because I'm rubbish. I'll stick you up, Richard, if you don't mind.
Right, okay. All right, yeah, fine. I'll do that. Yep, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a question, Alison, please?
Please do, yes.
In any of the dealings, Charlie and Richard, has anyone at any meetings talked about the idea mooted re the climate change summit, which is possibly talking about not building more new roads? Has anything been said?
Do you think that's a slightly too big topic for the GLAF, Jackie?
It's a very big topic. I just wondered if there had been any kind of little murmurs anywhere.
At the moment, I think there's a lot of inertia in the system, isn't there, Richard? And,
I think that didn't come up as a topic, but I think there was some discussion about the amount of fuel that would be used, that was used because of all the congestion that was before, that won't be in the future. But that,
right.
But as we all know, new roads generate more traffic. So, but that's the only thing I can think of in all the discussions that we had where it came up.
Okay.
I think that the general prevailing attitude at the moment is that we'll still be driving cars, they'll just be powered differently.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, Charlie. I think that, you know, the thought is simply that, as you say, the transport will continue, but it will become greener and greener. And you know, already the government's committed to getting rid of diesel cars by 2030 or whatever. So it's just something that will move on, and hopefully move on sooner rather than later. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up that topic if everyone's happy. As I say, conscious of time, and crack on to item 7, which, Paul, is the Old Kemble to Tetbury railway line, please.
Yeah, I mean, not very much has happened. I've spoken to Lord Bathurst a couple of days ago, actually. He's still agreeable to the idea.
Sorry, Paul, could I just ask you, in perhaps a 2-minute summary, just to explain to our new members just what this is about? Just so that people have got a background. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah, okay. It's to make a path, hopefully for riders, cyclists and walkers, along the old railway line, along land that's owned by the Bathurst estate. And it will allow the connection between Kemble Station and the Cotswold Airfield by walking along there. So it's actually quite a useful bit of a pathway. If you're going to Kemble Air Show and you come by rail, for instance, it's a hell of a way to walk around. But anyway, so Lord Bathurst was actually a member of the GLAF, and we did go and do a field trip where we walked along the section of track that he owns. Little bits owned by Network Rail, but they've already opened that up. So anyway, he's agreeable to the idea. The snag is that quite a bit of it is through a site of scientific interest, site of special scientific interest, and you have to get permission to do anything there, or it's a criminal offence. Now, I've spoken to Natural England and they're sort of agreeable to it, but under the rules, you have to get something in writing from the landowner. And so I've got to get something in writing from Lord Bathurst, really. And the way we left it is he was going to go and have a look in a couple of days at it again, just to check it out and get back to me. So hopefully he'll get back to me, and then hopefully we can move forward on it. But it's been very slow, but I suppose from his point of view, it's a sort of trivial or almost irrelevant, and he's got lots of other things he's doing.
He's fighting fires all over the place at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got trains and villages and all sorts of things. And just a bit of pathways, nothing much.
I think then, if it's all right, we will park the issue for today.
Yes.
If you could kindly perhaps obtain an update for us for the next last meeting, then perhaps we'll have something more meaningful to discuss then, if things have moved on by then. Is that acceptable to everyone? Yeah. Right. Okay then. Richard, perhaps you would kindly deal with both items 8A and B, which are the consultations in Huddle and the Cotswold Trails and Access Partnership.
Yep. Okay. Settle down and get your pads out, because here we go. Right. We'll start off with Huddle. Again, for new members, Huddle was a way of local access forums communicating with each other, sharing information, and we were also sent out information that would be of interest to local access forums. It was funded by Natural England, who paid for the subscription. However, it's been pulled. It was cancelled in March of this year. So Huddle is no longer available.
Oh, really? Oh, that's news to me. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I think at the last meeting they were talking about it, but it's actually happened. And they said, I remember reading it said, oh, we've got other plans. So I went on to see what was happening today on the email I got about other plans, and it said, oh, go on to Huddle. And you go to Huddle, there's nothing there, so you can't read what their plans are anymore. But I think basically for those we are looking at it. So that's Huddle. So it was useful to know when there was new legislation coming out or anything of interest. I have other ways of finding this out, so mainly through my Ramblers connection. So hopefully we should be able to substitute what was in Huddle. And to that end, there was a consultation on level crossing safety in February. It came out very late, so there wasn't time to get consultations from members of the LAF. But actually, it was incredibly technical, which I had difficulty understanding what it was about. So that's the only consultation that I've been aware of in the last 4 months that would have been directly relevant to the local access forum. However,
just briefly, Alan, do you ever get consultations sent to you as the officer for the LAF? Can't hear you, Alan, sorry. Still can't hear you.
Has he nodded off?
He's speaking, we just can't, unfortunately I can't lip read.
Mute's on, Alan.
I have to switch between layers. I was looking for the next item. I do get consulted now and again, but I haven't been consulted about any of that stuff, the Huddle or anything. Now and again we get the statutory consultations. They sometimes come to the chief officer and sometimes don't, to Pete Bungard or something, and they don't always filter down to the right place, or they go to Karen's department rather than my department. So it's a little bit hit and miss in the council with us being, separate arms and even in different bits of economy, environment and infrastructure.
Okay, I think it is. I think then with the termination of Huddle, it's really just an action for everyone then to keep an eye open for any relevant consultations that you think ought to be circulated to the LAF, and send them to Richard or Alan, and then we can have a look at them and circulate them more widely to the rest of LAF members if we think that there is something we should be responding on as an organisation. Does that sound sensible? I can't think of any other way to do it in the interim.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, Richard, do carry on.
Right, okay, one of the things that has come out comparatively recently is the government response to the landscapes review. Now, again, to do a bit of explanation about this is the government response to the Glover review. The Glover review was set up, I think about 2 years ago, to look at areas of now AONBs and national parks. I think that's more or less what it looked at, and it came up with a number of conclusions as to what could be done to improve landscapes for nature and also, quote, landscapes for everyone. They came up with a number of priorities, including increased access and increased access rights, were the two bits that were particularly relevant to the LAF. Now, the government's response has finally come out on the 24th of June. And what they are talking about is something called a local nature recovery scheme, which appears to be talking about integrating farming and the environment. They also use the terminology farming in protected landscapes. So that's sort of like the high level document, which just explains very briefly what it's about. And then it goes on to talk about something called the Nature Recovery Network, which is a combination of the DEFRA and Natural England, with the idea of restoring and enhancing, quote, wildlife-rich places. But as an element of that, they're talking about enabling enjoyment and connection with nature, which again, to me, sounds like access. Let's go on to farming in protected landscapes. This has got these nice high-level comments, more opportunities for people to explore and enjoy and understand the landscapes, greater engagement in the landscapes. So they're sort of doing stuff, but it also is all quite high-level stuff. So we'll have to see what runs out of that. But if people are interested, there's plenty more to read in that. Okay, does that sum it? I mean, you probably know as much as I do.
Yeah, I was just wondering when you were talking how that related to you know, they've been talking about the biodiversity network and green corridors and reconnecting the landscape, and I just wonder if this is all part of the same thing or whether this is yet another idea enterprise that's going off on another offshoot, or whether it's all linked together.
I think it's, you know, they had to say something about the Glover review.
I see.
It was very technical. It's George Eustace who they usually wheel out when they're a bit stuck for things to say. Oh, we're public, aren't we? Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Charlie.
Yeah, something interesting that came out of the Barrow-Wake working group meeting yesterday is the conflict perceived, especially by Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust, who have a serious interest there with the SSSI at Barrow-Wake, and access. So a lot of the SSSIs have public access to them. And of course, with things that have been happening recently with the pandemic, there's been a lot more public footfall on areas with public access. This also applies to the common where I live at Minchinhampton, where we're desperately trying to find out how it's possible to apply for either SAC status for Minchinhampton Common as Robborough Common has, or whether or not there's some sort of replacement now we've left the European Union for it. But as I said, that's something that's definitely come out and we need to be, I think, aware of and may well have to visit in not too distant future.
Can I just add something, Alison, please?
Yes.
So yeah, I was going to say the Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust are kind of changing their focus to really plug this restoring nature network and links. Yeah. And I tried a long time to get somebody from Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust to sit on the GLAF. Is it worth me trying again? I mean, I think they're a very relevant organisation.
Alan?
I agree, and I have mentioned it to them. I could go and actually make entreaties to them, because we could do. I think technically our biodiversity representative is you, Alison.
It is.
But it wouldn't. But they could represent owners of land with, you know, special environmental interest.
I think they were valuable.
As do the National Trust, and Lisa might know more on that front, because there's quite a good link between the two organisations. But yes, I'd be interested in having some from the GWT.
Could you follow that up then, Jackie, and see if we can?
Well, I can try again. Yeah, I mean, I tried for ages when I was sort of commandeered for recruitment. But with no success, and there was no one had enough time to come and be part of it, and they really almost I don't know, weren't very positive about it, I suppose. But I'll try again, shall I?
Yeah, please do. I have to say, I found that they seem to be getting a bit disconnected from their members a bit recently, is my personal view. Yeah, they certainly they would be very valuable asset to the GLAF if we could tempt them to come along. Because as you say, there is a lot of overlap. And as you rightly pointed out, Alan, I do technically represent the wildlife interests, and I believe I took over from Simon Pickering, didn't I, who was Ecotricity. I think it would be, as you say, with the increasing emphasis on wildlife and nature conservation, and if you like, the potential conflict with access, it would perhaps be beneficial to have some more wildlife interest members if we can find any.
I'll do another. I mean, members of staff may have changed, so maybe I'll be more lucky this time.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Jackie.
That's all right.
Okay, I think we should move on, unless anybody has any burning points. Richard, if you could talk about the Cotswold Trails and Access Partnership.
Yep, we had the last meeting on the 13th of April, so it has been comparatively recently. I'll just run through the highlights. across the Cotswolds, they've had something called the Gateway Project, which is to try and encourage visitors to when they come to the Cotswolds to explore the countryside and things more. So there's maps and guided and self-guided routes for either both walkers and cyclists, and those are available across the as far as I'm aware, across the Cotswolds. In Cirencester, they produced a very flash map of the town centre, which they've got up on a big notice by the public toilets. But you can also download this onto your, if you can work the technology, because I can't. It comes with a GPX, so that means you can put it on your phone and then follow the route round. The really good news is that they've created a new post, the part-time Cotswold Trail Officer, which is great. So it means that they'll now have a dedicated member of staff working on it, because Becky was the person who was doing it before was doing 3 other jobs as well. Go on. Did somebody say something? No. Sorry, it's the computer clicking away. Going back to this issue of the public, there is significant concern about the amount of traffic in certain parts of the Cotswold Way, and it's particularly Broadway Towers. Apparently, they've got a lot of erosion up there, and that is literally just from the volume of people that are going up there. So something that they are exploring. They're looking at putting in some better people counters. There always have been people counters on the Cotswold Way, but they don't work terribly well because they've been there for so long. So they're exploring the possibility of getting some new ones, so they can actually count the amount of traffic that's going there. This year, well, it was actually last year. It was Cotswold Way had its 50th birthday. They couldn't do anything last year, but the plan is in September this year, there's going to be a week of various activities along the Cotswold Way, including carrying a baton all the way with teams of walkers and runners to take it along the Cotswold Way. Now let's see what else. Oh, accessibility. This is a good one for the GLAF. The Cotswold Trails and Access Partnership has actually started looking at a bit more detail about providing better access, both along the Cotswold Way and in link and paths and routes linking into that, so people with different types of equipment can use it. So there's a sort of thing like powered wheelchairs, which can go somewhere, or you have a pushed wheelchair, which is more limited, and then you have special vehicles called trampers that can more or less go where a Land Rover could go, and so there's work being done with links with disability organisations to try and identify paths on the Cotswold Way that could be then promoted for people to use who have got limited mobility and can benefit from using this sort of equipment. The other thing I didn't know, which is also useful, is that one of these trampers, which is, as I say, it's like a 4x4 wheelchair, is available also at Robin Woods Hill. So they've got one there as well as at Crickley. There's one at Crickley Hill and there's one at Robinswood Hill as well. So for people with limited mobility, it's a great way to get around. I can say from personal experience, a member of my family enjoyed a really good day going all around Crickley Hill, which they wouldn't have been able to do without that facility. And finally, we mentioned the new countryside code, and there was certainly two things really came. Well, no, 3 things: barbecues, rubbish being left behind, and dogs causing problems were, I think, the 3 issues that came up with that. The countryside code has already been refreshed and issued, but this came out as part of the discussion about the countryside code. Okay, that's it, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Just crosses my mind while we've been talking about various items on the agenda that I do wonder whether some of these access issues, like the excessive erosion up at Broadway Tower, are things that will start to fade away once we are totally out of lockdown. I know we're not really in lockdown anymore, but once people can do all the things they used to be able to do, my hope certainly is that some of these countryside issues will start to disappear or become more manageable again as people go back to their normal activities, and I'm sure that is the wish of countryside managers and many others all over the country, but it will be interesting to see exactly what does happen as things progress over the course of this year and probably next year. Does anybody have any comments, questions for Richard on that item? No? Excellent. Right, we'll move on then, Alan, please, to the Agriculture Act 2020.
Right, I'm just keen that we made people aware of this and gave people the opportunity to discuss it. Now, the Agriculture Act is now in place, but the associated Environmental Land Management Scheme is, as far as I know, still being devised by government, by DEFRA. All I was wanting was some sort of a discussion around what people know about, and I wondered if Katie, who was with us but maybe disappeared.
I'm still here.
Oh, you're still here. Whether you could illuminate us from where you are about what you know about these matters, because we're not getting much information from anywhere about it, but it's bound to have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're basically right in saying that while it's in place, so the Agriculture Act is in place, but what the main bit that comes next is the Environmental Land Management Schemes, the ELMs. We're still not waiting's the wrong word. It's all being worked on and it's coming, but we don't have vast amounts of detail around it yet. So there's different trials going on. The DEFRA has recently launched the applications for for farmers to. The farmers can now apply and are applying to be sort of the first pilot farms who are going to hopefully be helping to shape what these schemes look like in the future. It all needs to be wrapped up and ready by 2024 so that the payments can start. That's according to the government's timeline. So we're all just kind of working on it at the moment. There is stuff in it related to public rights of way and around protecting landscapes and protecting rights of way and ensuring access to the countryside and all of this kind of stuff. Not a huge amount of detail, and by not a huge amount, I'm not aware that there's any detail on those bits and pieces yet. It's not my bag generally to be, fully in depth on what it says in all the legislation, but I don't think there's a huge amount of information on that yet. I can't imagine that they're going to be shortening or, reducing any access to the countryside or rights of way, but it might just. I honestly don't know what the government is looking at in that respect, because I mean, as we've talked about kind of today, you've got things like triple SIs and other environmental protection bits and pieces here and that, kind of all over the country, but also rights of way that kind of are on their boundaries or go through them. So not sure how it's all going to be balanced out going forward when we're encouraged to do more of that kind of thing, but. Yeah, we're all just sort of waiting around these days for information from DEFRA, unfortunately. So that's about as much as I can tell you, I think.
Right. Could I ask a quick question? I understand that this ends the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, which will run out, I think, in 2024 and be replaced by this. And the big problem with the Countryside Stewardship Scheme is that it was all temporary stuff. So a farmer could get paid for putting in a new bridle way or whatever, and get funded for it. But then, when the funding ran out, then the access would disappear. And I'd hope that the new scheme has something a bit more permanent that is going to be more useful. And I mean, the other thing is is it called headlands, the ends of fields? If you turn those into wildlife areas, you got funding. And I guess that's gonna be, Katie, I assume that's going to be the sort of thing that will now be taken into this ELMS scheme.
Yeah, exactly. All kinds of things to do with biodiversity, habitats, but also a lot of climate-related issues as well. So mitigation and adaptation, plus you know, clean energy production and all that sort of stuff. So it's all going to be part of it. But also, like I've said, rights of way, but there's also stuff around, I can't remember what the wording is, but it's around like encouraging native breeds. There's all kinds of random bits and pieces that are being chucked in, you know, random breeds in like rare cattle breeds, that kind of thing. So there's all kinds of bits and pieces in there. Don't know how most of it fits together, and you're right. We would also hope that some of the payments will be for longer term, because obviously this is now replacing our BPS claims. So we also will, as an industry, will want funding that stretches on, regardless of sort of what we have to do for it. So yeah, but as per, we're just waiting to see how it all works out, to be honest.
I think to add to what Richard said, the other problem as well with the old scheme is not only that they were permissive routes that disappeared as soon as the funding disappeared. The other problem was that you had to know where to go to find the information in the first place. You know, often these routes weren't broadcast by landowners being generally available, and they were sitting there happily and getting payments for them. And unless you happen to know which maps to go to and you could find a permissive route, say, oh look, there's a route there that I didn't realise I could use. You just got no central way of knowing about them and finding out about them. So I'd hope that anything that's taken forward would be a lot more transparent and more accessible to the public as well, so that they can find out about them much more readily than they have been able to in the past. Charlie, you had your hand up.
Yeah. Tied in with this, of course, on the environmental side is, I hope, will be a move away from monoculture crops, for instance, especially grassland, because I think having a diverse mixture of grasses and flowers on a meadow, for instance, is hugely beneficial, not only to wildlife, but also to the animals that or whatever that feed off it. As a for instance, there was something else I was going to say as well, and it slipped my mind. Sorry. As it does.
Okay. Anybody else got any thoughts to add? No. Right. Okay then. Well, I think it's something we need to be mindful of and something we need to monitor. And I think, Alan, if I could leave it with you, that it's popped on the agenda as and when there is anything we need to be looking at or discussing as a group, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Right, I have a few on my list for any other business. I think if we could start with DMMO progress then, Alan. As I said, for anybody who wasn't here right at the beginning of the meeting, there was an email from Alan this lunchtime which had some updated statistics on. I'm afraid I didn't get a chance to look at it and digest it. I don't even know if you did, to be honest, Alan. But I just wonder if you can provide us with a quick potted summary of what all these sheets are telling us.
Okay, I'll share it and skim through it, and then everyone who can view it. Sorry, Jackie, you'll have to look at your computer.
That's right. I've got my copy here.
Excellent. So if I can share the how do I do this? That's complicated. Here we are. Right, that's the okay. They're the stats. And then there's the briefing. This shows the stats of the unresolved DMMO application. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Good. It shows the numbers of undetermined, the number of outstanding, and then the activities since the last stats declaration, which was just over a year ago, oddly enough. Someone's dog's barking.
Sorry, that's my dogs.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we've got one application determined to not be made. The determinations undertaken done by our Commons and Rights of Way Committee. So there's 5 applications being determined, of which 4 were determined to make an order and 1 not. And 3 of them are waiting on orders to be made, and 1 of them is made but not yet confirmed due to objections. 3 have been sent to the Secretary of State or PINS, and you can go through it. It's been, I'd say it's been quite quiet. We've had 2 periods when we haven't been publishing orders because of restrictions on people's ability to go out and about. So we stopped publishing orders because basically you'd be encouraging people to go out and have a look, and that would be limited to people who live very close by generally. So it wouldn't be fair on the wider user group representatives and things. So we had 2 periods when we haven't published things. So everything's been slow for a year. If I move back to the briefing itself, there's a new CRO committee. They had training on the 25th of May, and they've just had a committee meeting on the 7th of June. And that's the level of activity at a CRO committee. One report was taken to it, which would be lengthy and detailed, and it was determined there's sufficient evidence to make an order. That in a sense, that illustrates how slow progress is on DMMOs. These are, and for those that don't know, these are applications to add or change paths on the definitive map, sometimes to remove them, but usually to add paths or to correct paths on basis of evidence. A bit on the 2026 and DREG. We've not had anything government or DEFRA about commencement of parts of the Deregulation Act 2016 or whatever it was, relating to PRO and 2026 cut-off. But we are working with the user bodies to highlight what it will mean and how to make applications. So we're still supporting them. We are preparing a funding bid for additional staff relating to the continued backlog of pre and post-determined applications. That's probably critical.
Can I just interrupt there, Alan, and just ask, do you think your funding bid is going to be successful? I only ask because this seems to be an ongoing problem, if you like, that the rights of way team is under-resourced, understaffed, and this is one of the reasons why you have this huge backlog.
I think the difficulty is if you set the needs of us to address the 2026 potential backlog against the needs of social care services, we're always going to lose.
Which is why I was wondering how
life and death.
Yeah.
And so we can only hope that members are sympathetic and that we get some movement on that. I'm putting together a bid for funding for another area, that's a way officer. I'm hoping that will be successful, but I'm not holding my breath. It's a difficult area because it looks, we look like we're managing. We aren't managing very well. We're not getting that much done. We're struggling with it, but and that goes across the board. I would say there might be a 20-30% chance of success. That's with a sort of a realistic hat on, but we've got to bid. We've got to ask if we're going to get anything.
And how many officers do you actually have processing DMMOs at the moment?
I think the team is 3.
Still only 3.
Yeah.
Right.
Juliet has just left us as well, so you should know that Juliet Walker, who's a fantastic officer in my opinion in the asset data team, however team we get after definitive map applications, has left to work for the land registry, and they've just appointing a replacement. I think a chap called Dan. So we'll see how we get on. So it's all in there. Karen's given us that update, and that's been circulated. So it's not brilliant, frankly. And I can only say we will bid for funding if we can. We have a process to do that called the medium-term financial strategy. So we bid for funding for revenue and for capital. And I hope that we're successful from the point of view of the agenda that we have, but I understand that the council may have its eyes elsewhere. It's not going to be the top of its list. But I hope that, by bringing it to your attention and indeed to Robert's and Wendy's attention, that they might support it if it ever gets through to members, which it could do. I think it would do at the big budget meeting next January or early February, usually in the new year.
And can I just also clarify, are you now saying you are as a team back up to speed again post-COVID, or are you still struggling with the COVID restrictions?
Well, orders have been published. There are issues with the COVID restrictions which are impacting us, so we still haven't reopened the map room to the public. We still have on the operational side lots and lots of issues. There's still a far bigger numbers of people using the countryside than there were pre-COVID. and along with, you know, excessively wet winters and this sort of thing, we've got a big backlog, and we are struggling, and that's an ongoing issue. I do hope it eases up, but I think the pressure on the local countryside to accommodate staycations and you know, people staying at home or nearby or in Britain for their holidays will take its toll as well. We'll just have to see. We can't, unfortunately, ship everyone off to Spain.
Not this year.
No.
Charlie?
Yeah, 2 items. One is even when an order goes to the planning inspectorate, they can still do a spectacular cock-up. There is one in Bisley where they've made a right foul up that me, Jackie Harris and Alan Kind have been lightheartedly discussing, because the only alternative to being lighthearted about it is holding your head in your hands. It's complicated as to how that'll be resolved. The other thing, of course, is with the map room not being open, again, that comes back to my project. I'm wondering whether or not the county council could come up with some way of providing the photographs that I've taken to the public. I don't know, or whether or not that would be regarded as a little bit iffy. I don't know, because of problems with copyright and so on.
Well, hopefully it's something that will resolve itself soon, and maybe even as soon as later this month. If we are fully opened up, I can't see any reason why the map room couldn't once more be available to the public. So, you know, let's just hope that that is one issue that just resolves itself very quickly. But yes, it is a problem. You know, that's why I was asking Alan how much it was still impacting DMMO work in general, and whether or not we were hoping to see a greater improvement by the time of our next meeting, or whether we'd still be in the after effects of COVID and probably looking at issues similar to the ones we're looking at in the sheets today.
Another question I do have, sorry. When are you, Alan, going to take the opportunity to finally get hard-nosed with landowners who've used the pandemic as an excuse to close or divert paths?
We will deal with those issues when they're brought to our attention. I'm not aware of any particular issues at the moment, but if you are, let me know.
There's one in our parish I need to check.
Well, we did deal with that one, if it's the one I'm thinking of, which is down the Tobacconist Farmway.
That's it. In my opinion, we need to be pretty hard-nosed about insisting that the definitive line is cleared.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Alan, sorry, were you about to respond on something?
What I was going to say was there aren't any limitations on the definitive map team for publishing orders now. So there's no particular reason why things should be slow, but the big setback's losing Juliet. Juliet had a number of years' experience, had become a very, very able definitive map officer, and I think losing her will be a big blow to the team, because she's dynamic but also a very friendly face as well. So she'll be quite hard to replace. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, does anybody have any other observations or thoughts before we move on to the next item of any other business? Paul?
Yes, I'd just like to say that it still seems to be wedded with the idea that the more people you throw at this, the better results you're going to be. And the fact is, as I keep saying, the process is such that when the numbers were increased, there was no actual increase in the number of DMOs being processed in the past. What's wrong is the process that's being done, in my opinion. I'll just send you through the process for Hertfordshire that I got out of the book. And if you contrast that with the process that Karen documented for us, she had to work out what their process was. And if you look at it, it's a whole load of spaghetti. There's lots of what's called nugatory work where they don't make a decision until further on down the process, and waste effort if it's not going to proceed. While if you look in the Hertfordshire process, they actually do their assessment up front. And the other thing, of course, is they actually say in here they're doing lots of processes all at once, which they're moving backwards and forwards to. It's the old spinning plates thing. You're spending all your time spinning the plates and not actually doing anything else. But I mean, my opinion is that the process needs to be improved, or a decent process worked out, not just write down what you do, which is obviously evolved over time. And I'd propose that we advise the County Council to actually produce a decent process for DMMO processing.
Yeah, well, if I could just interject there, Paul, because I think we've been over this before, actually.
Nothing's done, is it?
Well, I recall 2 years ago, maybe, or perhaps a bit less, that I had suggested that Gloucestershire officers contact Northumberland because they were cracking on with orders at a pretty fast rate. I think, if I recall correctly, some contact or investigation was made, and again, I can't quite recall exactly what the outcome was, but that I think it was along the lines of the processes that they were using weren't appropriate in Gloucestershire, because in Northumberland they generally didn't get objections to their DMMOs in the way that they did in Gloucestershire. We had also suggested that there were other counties like Oxfordshire who seem to be rattling on a bit quicker now with their DMMOs. So I'm not, I mean, I agree with you, and I agree with your recommendation, but I think as a GLAF, it's a recommendation we've made previously, perhaps a little less strongly, that perhaps they'd like to look at other counties and see if there's areas in which they could improve their process and speed it up a little bit, and you know, take the best from all the counties and come up with a more streamlined system and then trial it. But I don't think that's happening. I can see Alan's got his thumbs up there, and one or two are nodding as well. I don't know as a LAF how much more we can repeat this message to Gloucestershire and suggest to them that, as you say, Paul, that perhaps the process that they're following at the moment could be improved. Alan, I don't know if you want to come in at this point, Alan Bentley, and respond on that and tell us whether there is anything we can do as a LAF which might persuade you otherwise.
I suppose the next step up, if we can't persuade the team to review their processes, would be to escalate it to their team manager and write to Liz Kirkham, I suppose, who oversees the function, and say, actually, maybe this needs a formal interjection, but maybe I should take it up with Karen and say, look, LAF is very perturbed and agitated about this and worried about the lack of progress, and they really want to try and help you get to a better place. And then we keep that in our back pocket for if there is no progress.
I think that's reasonable, and I think, you know, because it's been a very difficult year, we've got to cut everyone a bit of slack in whatever their role they're doing, in whatever job they're doing all over the country at the moment, because we have had particularly trying circumstances. But I think, you know, if it could be noted as a LAF that we're still concerned about the lack of progress of DMMOs and perhaps the processes that are currently being used to investigate them, and if you could perhaps have an informal word and pop it on the agenda for the next meeting, and give us an update then. And as you say, perhaps if we don't have a satisfactory answer, then it gets escalated.
Okay.
I think, conscious that it's just gone 3:45 and some of us need to go at 4, I'm going to park that issue and cut you all short. I'm sorry. Countryside Access and ROIP. Alan, can you briefly update us?
Very briefly. I've done a lot of work on what we would calling a light touch revision to our rights of way and countryside access improvement plan. We have a working group which comprises Jerry, who isn't with us today, and Nick and Charlie, and I think Richard, principally users, obviously, and that makes sense that it's people from the user side who are particularly interested in that. What the ROIP does, just so those who don't know, who haven't been involved, need to know, is it effectively sets the policy for our approach to public rights of way management, which includes both the definitive map side, which we've just been talking about, and the operational side. It sets it in the context of the local transport plan, which it's allied to and annexed to. Local transport plan has been agreed. I haven't had the chance to do most of the work on the ROIP. I've got a draft which I would like to circulate to our working group at some point soon, and for us to come back with some feedback next time about how we're progressing. But that's just something which has gone on the back burner because I've spent a lot of the last year dealing with complaints, reports, FOIs, all sorts, MPs, the usual. It's been a mad year, so apologies we haven't been able to progress that more quickly, but that's just the way it is.
Okay then, so we can expect something to be circulated from you sometime before the next GLAF meeting then?
Yes, what we'll do is I'll share it with the working group first, and we'll work through it. And if they feel it's acceptable, we'll seek the endorsement of the wider GLAF, or right, tweak it and seek the endorsement.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. Paul, in 5 minutes and no more, could you please update us on your rural pavements?
I think probably the answer is probably no. Could I ask for it to be made an item in next meeting's agenda? I think that might be more sensible.
That sounds sensible because we are starting to run out of time now.
I realise that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Paul. I can't go around the room because no doubt everybody's in a different order on everybody's screen. So if you have any other business, I would say put your hand up, but I can only see some people. So I'm going to ask Nick, Lisa and Tim, I think it is, who I can't currently see, as well as Jackie, to speak up first if they have any items, because I can't tell whether you've got your hand up or not.
No, nothing from me.
No, nothing from me.
No, okay.
I just wanted to say, is there any news on our gate, the centre wire gate?
Oh, no.
I think I think Jackie, we agreed at the last meeting that we were going to park that item. Okay. We hadn't been able to make progress with centre wire in terms of provision of a gate, and we hadn't been able to make much progress in terms of the identification of a suitable site. Thank you, Robert. I've just seen your apologies. Bye-bye. Thanks for your attendance, and we'll see you soon. Yes, sorry, Jackie. Basically we agreed at the last meeting that we would park that item and forget about it, because we were all wasting an awful lot of time and just not making the progress to take it forward, which was a shame, obviously, but you know, we can only put so much effort into something if we're not getting the progress and action that we need from others outside the GLAF. So that item has now been scratched from the agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No, not at all. Anybody else in the I can't see category who wants to raise any other business? Right, okay, I'm going to assume the silence means no. I saw both Richard and Charlie put their hands up. Richard, you can go first. Your AOB, please.
Right. It's really an agenda item for next time, and I've already written to you about this, but double metal gates. These are the big metal double field gates with a throw over bar, throw over frame, sorry, that can create barriers on footpaths. I think we could discuss it in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you add that to the agenda then, Alan? And Richard, just so that we are all clear, would you mind digging out a photograph and circulating it or for Alan, or giving it to Alan to circulate so that everybody is clear exactly what we're talking about here. I know what you mean, but just to be absolutely clear on this.
Fine.
Thank you. Did
And
you have any?
One tiny bit of information really for everybody, and that is there's some work just started on the Bolton to Kingham railway line with the intention of turning it into a public, not public, into a route for walkers, cyclists and horse riders. There's somebody called Paul Morris who has just started to see if he can make some progress, and I believe he's been making some links with Sustrans.
Right.
About getting that. Although obviously it has to be dealt with very sensitively because of the number of landowners that with land on that bit of railway line, abandoned railway line. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
So are you going to update us at next meeting, or is this something you're going to send a link?
Well, I can provide more information. I'm more than happy to provide more information. If it's okay with you, I'll get onto Paul and see if he wants something circulated to the GLAF, in which case I'll organise that.
I think it would be worth it because presumably some of that link is going to be within Gloucestershire, isn't it?
Oh yeah, most of it is.
Some of it will be Oxfordshire, won't it?
Well, it's only a tiny bit, so literally about a quarter of a mile, I think, in Oxfordshire.
Right. Okay. In that case, I think we should be monitoring that. That is very much part of what I would consider the strategic element of the GLAF. So could you please source some information and circulate it if that's okay?
Yeah, I'll do that, no problem. Yep.
Thank you. Charlie.
Right, hopefully I can canter through the 4 items I've got. Following your admission of a declaration of interest, my suggestion is, as has happened on a parish council on, we have as a formal agenda item declarations of interest if it applies. So it's a standard item. The next thing is the GCC organisational structure regarding public rights of way and the asset team, which have different senior managers. As a project for the TRF, actually, I did manage to find out the organisational structure where it applies there. The one I would be interested in finding out more about would be how legal ties in with public rights of way and the asset team, and who, now Janet Smith has retired, is the specialist there who you go to when you get that. But you don't need to answer now. All right, next thing is, as I said last night, I attended an insight presentation. I intend to try and follow that up and see whether or not they will be interested in doing a presentation to a future local access forum meeting. And finally, one of the things I've come across recently in the technical literature is a very low powered wireless communication system that I immediately thought will be very useful for monitoring gates, which is an eternal bugbear for landowners with people leaving them open. And it's something that I think that should be sent to centre wire, and that's what I intend to do, which is why I'd love to see the visit that was aborted 18 months ago to go to centre wire could be revived. And that's all.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Yeah, any visit would be good, really, wouldn't it?
Maybe a member from the Insight people or somebody they could recommend to come onto the local access forum, because we do need that sort of representation on the less able side, shall we say, or the visually impaired in this case, of course.
Thank you. Okay, did you make a note of all those, Alan?
I'm doing my best.
If you're struggling, go back to Charlie.
Anyway.
Could I ask Charlie whether the cost of the radio system is cheaper than putting the cost of buying a spring for the gate?
Even springs can be budged or can be broken. The gates can be propped open, so the landowner quite often must know whether a gate is open, especially as he's strictly liable for the straying of stock onto other people's land and especially onto roads and railways. So it's something I need to follow up. It was something that I read a series of articles about this in a computer magazine, actually, and it struck me as being a highly appropriate use of the technology as I understood it.
No, that'd be great if you could give us some feedback at the next meeting. Yeah, thank you. Okay, did anybody else have any other business? I just had one very quick point I wanted to pick up from the last meeting. It was actually item 6, and it was in relation to consultations and whether anybody responded on behalf of the GLAFs, or in this particular case it was IPRO, the Institute of Public Rights of Way Management. I asked them that specific question, whether they did respond to consultations. The answer was they did respond to some. I said, please could you tell me where on your website I can find your consultation responses? The answer came back, oh, we don't actually currently put them on the website. To which I said, well, as a paid member, it would actually be quite nice to see those consultations, both so we could see what IPRO had said, and also as part of the value for money of your membership. And they thought this was a very good idea. And so the short answer is hopefully at some stage soon, because I know they've just launched a new website, consultation responses where they make them on behalf of IPRO will appear on their website. And if there is anything relevant, then it's something that we could bring back to the GLAF meeting. So that was just a very quick update for you from that agenda item. Okay, it is 3 minutes to 4, so unless anybody has any burning matters that they have forgotten to mention, then I think we ought to close the meeting. Just for information, I have the next date provisionally as October the 21st. That is to be confirmed. Hopefully we'll be able to do a morning field visit. I'm hoping we're going to be able to do the one in Gloucester, but obviously that's subject to making arrangements nearer the time. Unless anybody has anything else to say, I think we will wrap it up then. Alan, have you got any final comments?
I'll just thank you to everyone for staying on and tolerating my incompetence with IT.
No, not at all. Fantastic. And I'm still impressed that Sue's upside down.
I bet all the blood's rushed to her head though.
Okay then, everyone. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you on the screen, if not in person. Cheers then. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.